Chapter 401, The Successor End. Greene looked at Jaime and asked, "Are you okay?" Jaime shrugged. "Only when I put on the white robe can Cersei feel relieved. She wants to inherit Casterly Rock and rule everything." Seeing Jaime pretending not to care, Greene suddenly remembered a saying from his past. The grandson doesn't feel bad at all when he sells his grandfather's land. He raised an eyebrow slightly. "It seems our wise Queen Mother is also very aware of your importance in Lannister, Sergeant." After taking a sip of wine, Jaime's green eyes shifted towards Greene. "Why didn't you attend Tommen's coronation ceremony?" Greene looked at the funeral procession gradually marching into the distance, sighed softly, and said, "That is the stage that belongs to Cersei Lannister." After a pause, he patted Jaime on the arm. "Please cheer up. Queen Cersei is prone to impulsive actions at this time. Lannister needs you very much today." "Uncle Kevin is enough," Jaime said, combing his wind-tossed hair with his fingers. "Recently, I often dream about my fallen brothers of the Kingsguard. What I care more about now is restoring the glory of the Kingsguard from the past." He murmured to himself, "Maybe I'm still qualified to do this." Seeing the self-deprecating, bitter look on Jaime's face, Greene moved his index finger against his thumb and said, "Are you planning to repair the dilapidated house? This is much harder than playing swordsmanship. Why don't you choose an easier goal? For example, to be a statue of the Red Keep quietly every day." Jaime glanced sideways at Greene, his tone firm. "I will let you and everyone see the supreme glory of the King's. I will look forward to it," Greene said, pointing in the direction of the city gate with his chin. "Let's go and have something to eat." The two walked side by side towards the city gate, and Greene was the first to break the silence. "Where do you plan to start restoring the glory of the Kingsguard?" Sir Jaime thought for a moment. "I will clear the Kingsguard's trash first." Greene nodded in agreement, but quickly frowned. "Will Queen Cersei agree?" Jaime's face darkened. "She won't stop me." Greene did not ask for the reason and directly changed the subject. "Jaime, do you have a suitable candidate for the Kingsguard in mind?" Jaime frowned and thought for a moment. "This still needs to be considered, but I believe we will find one." They had arrived at the gate of the city. Greene took the reins, handed over by the attendant, got on his horse, paused, and said, "If I recommend you a candidate for the Kingsguard when you are ready to fight, will it embarrass you, sir?" Jaime reached out and stroked the horse's mane. "I believe in Duke Kleb's honor." Greene shrugged. "His name is Vardis Egan, one of the guard captains of the Red Keep. You can test him as much as you like." Go Alley, Night Tavern. After the two sat down, the waiter quickly brought barbecue, wine bottles, and wine glasses. Greene looked around casually. "Tyrion and I met here for the first time. That day was also the first day I arrived in King's Landing." He smiled to himself. "I suspect I am mourning him." Jaime, who was pouring the wine, couldn't help laughing. "Tyrion would complain loudly and ask you to comfort him with beauty if he were here." After talking for a while, he pushed the filled wine glass over. "Is there any news about him?" Greene picked up the wine glass, took a sip, and said, "Except for the weather being slightly colder, his life will not be any worse than in King's Landing. But he should still be on the ship at this time." "This is good news." Jaime raised his glass. "Have you met Cersei?" Greene rubbed the body of the wine glass, was silent for a while, and said, "After a brief chat, she made me feel a little strange, but I didn't." Jaime didn't dwell on it too much. After all, she had suddenly lost her father and eldest son overnight. Hearing this, Jaime shrugged slightly. Her eyes were blinded by the desire for power. He did not express his inner thoughts. Although he no longer loved Cersei, he did not want to accuse her in front of others. He took a sip of wine. "I believe Uncle Kevin will help her stabilize the Red Keep soon," Greene agreed. "I support your idea. Count Kevin has enough wisdom and ability to stabilize the current situation of the Seven Kingdoms and Tommen's Iron Throne." After a pause, he also raised his glass. "The premise is that Queen Cersei and Earl Kevin reach an agreement on governance." Greene's reminder seemed to make Jaime think of something. He frowned and took a slow sip of wine. Greene continued, "I hope everyone in the Red Keep will have a tacit understanding before I come back." Jaime raised his eyebrows in surprise. "You mean you are leaving King's Landing again?" After a pause, Greene nodded slowly. I don't plan to participate in what happens next. Cersei, Tommen, Lannister, Tyrell, the Lord Chancellor. It gives me a headache just thinking about it. Jaime couldn't help but sneer. Unfortunately, I don't think the lioness will let you go easily. She needs you now. What she really needs is a Lannister. Greene spread his hands and continued. That's why I found you. In the past, you disappeared suddenly, and then I explained your whereabouts to Cersei. This time, it's finally your turn, White Knight. Jaime recalled it for a moment and realized that was indeed the case. He shook his head and said, Okay, let me do it this time. By the way, have you thought of the reason? Greene thought seriously for a while and said, Suddenly tired of the Game of Thrones, or can you help me think of a more suitable one? Sir Jaime spread his hands and said, If my tongue could be as flexible as yours, I don't think my knighthood would be so bad. Greene raised his face and smiled. Take your time, Jaime. You can still live for a long time. At least you still have a chance to redeem the things you regret. Seeing the bitterness on Jaime's face, the kind-hearted Lord Greene comforted him. At least, the Kingsguard today are notoriously bad, and it is easier for you to get support from others. Amid Greene's laughter, Jaime leaned back in his chair, smiled, and said, This sounds really comforting, Your Majesty the Duke. In the afternoon, the sun was still hot. As soon as Greene arrived at the Red Keep, he met Count Kevin and his guards, who were about to enter. After meeting, Greene hugged Count Kevin and sighed. The Seven Kingdoms have lost a pillar, and the entire realm is immersed in grief for the death of your brother. I know that I cannot truly understand the depth of your pain. Please forgive me for the inadequacy of my words. Count Kevin couldn't hide the sadness on his face. He nodded, patted Greene's arm, and said in a slightly hoarse voice, Thank you for your concern. Thank you. The two of them entered the Red Keep together, walking and chatting casually. When they reached the vicinity of the Godswood, Greene suddenly stopped. Count Kevin, please excuse my presumption. Will you take over as Prime Minister? Earl Kevin also paused. He was silent for a long time with his hands behind his back, and then slowly said, Duke Greene, to be honest, maybe even I don't know the answer. He raised his head and looked in the direction of Maegor's Holdfast, his eyes deep and complicated. Perhaps there will be an answer soon. Greene's brown eyes moved slightly, and he spoke in an uncertain tone. Are you worried about the Queen Regent? A wary look flashed in Earl Kevin's eyes, and then seeing that he deliberately changed the subject, Greene did not ask further questions but continued to chat with him about other things. Earl Kevin said goodbye in the garden near the throne room and left. After his figure completely disappeared from sight, Greene paced back and forth for a few steps and suddenly said, Brenna, please have someone prepare the necessary arrangements. Red Castle, Kleb Manor. We will leave in a moment, Cersei commanded. Head directly to Kleb Manor outside the city. Maegor's Tower, the Queen Mother's study. Sirs, I examined the old worn gold coin in her hand with intense scrutiny. Grandmeister Pycelle's voice broke the silence. Your Majesty, this coin dates back to before the War of Conquest. The king depicted is the 20th King of Gars, and the emblem is that of the Gardner family. Cersei clenched the gold coin tightly, barely suppressing the fire of hatred in her eyes. She spoke coldly. Pycelle, forget what just transpired. If anyone learns of our conversation, I will have your tongue removed. Pycelle's body trembled visibly as he stammered. Of course, Your Majesty. Please rest assured I am old and my memory is failing. I know nothing. I swear it. Cersei waved her hand dismissively. You may leave. Shortly after Pycelle departed, Count Kevin arrived as expected. Sir Osney, ensure we are not disturbed, Cersei ordered. Once Lord Kevin was seated, Cersei turned her gaze upon him. Despite his age of 57, his skin remained delicate, though his head was nearly bald. His square chin, covered by a very short yellow beard, could not hide the flesh beneath. The sight of her uncle reminded Cersei of the old guard dog at Casterly Rock, but what she needed now was a loyal guard dog. Uncle Kevin, she began, her red lips parting slightly, I know how much my father relied on you. Now I need your service as well. She raised her chin slightly. Tommen has been successfully crowned. He needs an experienced elder by his side. My son and I hope you will take over my father's position. The position of Prime Minister. Earl Kevin stared at the proud lioness for a moment before speaking slowly. I heard that Jaime rejected your invitation. Cersei's expression faltered slightly. At that time, the sudden death of my family left me in a daze. I couldn't think clearly. I can't even remember what I said. Jaime is very brave, but everyone knows he cannot bear the heavy responsibility of Prime Minister. A touch of sarcasm crossed Count Kevin's lips. Cersei, for the vacant position of Prime Minister, you might consider Mace Tyrell. This could ensure tomorrow's royal meeting ends smoothly. Cersei leaned forward abruptly, her voice filled with anger. Never, she paused, sweeping a lock of hair from her forehead. I will never indulge the greedy Tyrell family. Earl Kevin nodded, his voice calm and measured. It is indeed foolish to make Mace the Prime Minister, but it is even more foolish to make him an enemy. Cersei, I heard what happened in the Hall of Lights. It was extremely unwise to deny the oath between Lannister and Tyrell in front of everyone. I didn't deny it. I just temporarily forgot. I was very sad at the time, which is understandable. Cersei's impatience grew with Kevin's reproach. She leaned back in her chair, took a moment to calm herself, and then spoke again. Who is more qualified to hold the position of Prime Minister than my father's brother, the man who has always been close to my father and me? Kevin sighed deeply. Everyone needs someone they can trust. My brother trusted me, and your mother. Though it was unclear why her uncle mentioned her mother, Cersei responded casually. He loved her, I know. They're reunited now. I pray the same and hope that my brother can be with her, Kevin said, looking intently at Cersei's face. After a moment he added, Cersei, you are asking me to make another sacrifice. Cersei did not deny it. She raised her glass, a slight smile playing on her lips. Uncle, I will not ask for more than my father did. But I'm tired, Earl Kevin said, picking up his wine glass. Kevin took a sip of wine and sighed deeply. I haven't seen my wife for almost 2 years. One son has become a corpse, and the other is about to get married. Harrenhal, which my brother gave me, must be restored to its former glory. The fertile land of the 3 rivers needs protection, and the scorched fields await recultivation and sowing. Cersei, unaware that Kevin needed her comfort, suppressed her impatience and spoke in a gentle tone. Uncle, Tommen cannot do without your help, and the kingdom needs your care even more. Tommen, the kingdom, Lannister, Kevin murmured, taking another sip of wine before sighing. All right then, I will stay and serve King Tommen. Very good. Cersei began to praise him, but Kevin suddenly raised his voice, cutting her off. On the condition that I will serve as regent and hand of the king, and you will return to Casterly Rock. Cersei stared at Kevin in astonishment for a moment before reminding him, Uncle, I am the Queen Regent. Kevin met her gaze steadily. You are now, but have you forgotten the order left by Lord Tywin before his death? He asked you to leave the Red Keep and return to Casterly Rock. Cersei's anger flared. He said that, yes, but I didn't agree. Kevin's expression remained calm. Cersei, since you want to inherit your father's Casterly Rock, as a lord, you should naturally guard your territory. Chapter 402 Sweet Talk. Cersei's chest heaved several times before she managed to speak. Kevin, I am the Queen Regent, and I should guard my son. Earl Kevin glanced at Cersei coldly and replied, Your father didn't think so. Cersei's voice rose slightly. My father has passed away. Earl Kevin put down his wine glass, paused, and spoke slowly. This is my misfortune, and the misfortune of the entire kingdom. Cersei, open your eyes and see yourself clearly. Your father could have ended the chaos in the 7 kingdoms, but you... Cersei interrupted Kevin angrily. I can end the chaos in the 7 kingdoms, just like my father. After yelling, she paused for a moment, stared at Kevin with her green eyes, lowered her voice, and continued. With your help, my uncle. As long as you are loyal to me, as you were to my father. Kevin shook his head. Cersei, you are not your father. Moreover, your father always regarded Jaime as his true heir. Cersei's fingers flexed. Jaime donned the white cloak during King Aerys's time. The Kingsguard do not hold lands, take wives, or have children. He knew exactly what that meant. Even if there was a way to get him to take off the white cloak, he never liked to think. He preferred to laugh at everyone and everything. He was never suitable to be a ruler. Hearing this, Earl Kevin's forehead lines deepened. Despite this, Jaime is your first choice as Prime Minister. Why, Cersei? Cersei couldn't help but look away, moved her lips, and said, I told you, at that time I was drowning in sadness and not thinking clearly. Ill thinking, Kevin repeated Cersei's words, staring at her. This is exactly why you must return to Casterly Rock. The kingdom needs thoughtful people to rule more than ever. How dare he underestimate her? The lioness stood up and declared, The king is my son. Facing the roar of the lioness, Count Kevin's tone remained unhurried. Of course, Tommen is your son, but judging from Joffrey's fate, you are just as unqualified to be a mother as you are to be a ruler. Bastard! The lioness poured the wine in her glass firmly into Kevin's face. Earl Kevin stood up slowly, the wine flowing over his chin and dripping from his short beard. There was anger in his eyes, but more disappointment. Your Majesty the Queen Mother, I'm sorry. Please allow me to take my leave. In Cersei's eyes, Kevin was extremely arrogant. She said sharply, Why do you make demands on me? You are just a knight raised by my father. You don't even own your own territory. As she said that, she suddenly remembered Harrenhal, which her father had given to Kevin, and it was her father who had raised the appetite of the man in front of her. Her clear blue eyes moved slightly. She raised her chin slightly and said, Harrenhal is just a ruin. If you swear allegiance to me, I promise, I will give it to you when Devon breaks Riverrun. Indeed, I'm glad you can see the devastation there, but Cersei, you don't have your father's vision for the future. Kevin's eyes became profound. Your grandfather did not treat any of his children badly when he died, and Tywin also knew how to reward others for their services. Therefore, the coins in my home are piled up in boxes, and Lannisport, there are still loyalists there. My 200 sworn knights will enter Harrenhal within a month at most. Are you threatening me? Cersei asked, her voice trembling with anger. Ignoring Cersei's question, Kevin continued, Why did your father give me Harrenhal? Because he knew that I had the ability to govern it, and what was his ultimate goal? To end Riverrun Trout's dominance in the Riverlands once and for all. After a pause, he looked directly at Cersei. Also, listen, I am not threatening you, I am giving you advice. Your Majesty Cersei, if you are wise, please do not regard me as your enemy. Cersei's palms clenched into fists. You asked me to treat you as my enemy. This is your own choice. Kevin wanted to leave directly, but thinking of Kevin Lannister took a deep breath and said, If you are not willing to let me be the regent, then appoint me as the acting lord of Casterly Rock. Promote Matu Sloan to prime minister, and I must remind you, unless you have a way to marry Myrcella, do not let Duke Greene take the position of prime minister. Count Mattis? Isn't he Tyrell's confidant? Cersei was taken aback by Kevin's suggestion. When did Tyrell manage to bribe her uncle? Seeing the confusion on Cersei's face, Kevin realized for the first time how difficult it must have been for his brother Tywin. He took a deep breath and explained, Earl Mattis is not only wise, prudent, and widely respected, but more importantly, his wife is from the Redwine family. The relationships among the nobles in the Reach are complex. If you nominate a great vassal of the Tyrell family as prime minister, the Duke of Metz will not be able to object. Mattis is a sensible man who understands loyalty. If you appoint him, he will become your ally. This way, you strengthen your own power while weakening Tyrell's, and the Duke of Metz will be grateful for your actions. Kevin continued, Duke Greene is a renowned general. After Duke Tywin's death, no one is more capable than him of ending the war in the Seven Kingdoms. But in peacetime he is not needed. Those skilled in warfare prefer to concentrate power in their own hands to ensure victory. If you make him prime minister, even if he has no other ambitions, he will control the power of the Red Keep. His affection for you is insignificant compared to the conflicts of power. He added, If you have a conflict with Duke Greene, the balance among the Lannister, Tyrell, and Crab families in the Red Keep will be disrupted, plunging the Seven Kingdoms into even greater chaos. By then, your father will not be able to clean up the mess for you. Kevin's sincere analysis made Cersei look at him as if he were a traitor. He finally couldn't contain his frustration and said, My advice ends here. It's up to you whether you listen or not. If you want to appoint Moonboy as prime minister, that's your choice. As Kevin turned to leave, Cersei shouted angrily, When your king needed you the most, you abandoned him. You abandoned Tommen, Kevin Lannister. Kevin paused, his green eyes meeting Cersei's without blinking. Woman, Tommen is taken care of by his mother, and he also has his father. Cersei's pupils shrank in shock. How did he know? Who else knew? Jaime. She needed to find him immediately and come up with a solution together. But what would happen if she found him? His solution would be to flee King's Landing, but the lioness would never admit defeat. Suppressing her panic, Cersei resolved that she would never admit defeat. She would turn all those who dared to oppose her into ashes. After a moment, she called for the maid to clean up her desk and began to think about her next move. Keevan's arrangement had an unexpected twist, and she needed to act. Once the maids had cleaned the study, Cersei summoned the Kettleblack brothers. Glancing at Osfori and Osney standing before her, she pulled out a blank sheepskin, spread it on the table, picked up a quill, and said, "Sir Osfori Kettleblack, in recognition of your loyalty as my captain of the guard, I appoint you as the commander-in-chief." The winebag back in place and set it aside. The details are still murky, but the Red Castle is in chaos. Queen Mother Cersei is trying to consolidate her power, and the city is on edge. Princess Ariane's eyes widened in shock. Joffrey killed Tywin, and then he died? This is unbelievable. Greene nodded solemnly. Indeed, it is. The power dynamics in King's Landing are shifting rapidly. You and your sister must be cautious. Ariane took a deep breath, trying to process the information. What does this mean for Dorne? For my family? Greene leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. It means that the political landscape is more volatile than ever. Dorne must tread carefully. There are opportunities, but also great risks. Ariane nodded slowly, her mind racing with possibilities. We need to return to Sunspear and inform my father. He must know about this. Greene stood up and offered his hand to Ariane. Then we should not delay. I will arrange for your safe passage back to Dorne. Ariane took his hand and stood up, her resolve firm. Thank you, Greene. Despite everything, you have been a friend. Greene smiled faintly. Just doing what I can in these troubled times. Now let's get you and your sister out of here. As they made their way out of Crab Manor, Ariane couldn't help but feel a mix of fear and excitement. The Game of Thrones was more dangerous than ever, but she was determined to play her part and protect her family. Back in King's Landing, Cersei continued to write furiously, her mind racing with plans and schemes. She would not let anyone stand in her way. The Iron Throne was hers to control, and she would do whatever it took to keep it. The night was dark and full of terrors, but for those who knew how to navigate its shadows, it was also full of opportunities. Greene placed the winebag back on the table as he stood up and said, As for the king's specific cause of death, whether it was an accident or murder, people are still debating. Princess Ariane's eyes flickered with curiosity. After a moment of contemplation, she looked up at Greene and asked, What do you think? Was the king murdered? Greene nodded slightly. I agree with most people. Although King Joffrey was not yet an adult, his body was as strong as one. If it wasn't for someone murdering him, how could he have drowned in the bathtub? If this was an accident, it would be the biggest joke in the Seven Kingdoms. Meeting Ariane's gaze, he smiled and added, If it weren't for the wise Princess Ariane visiting my manor as a guest, but instead staying in King's Landing, I think the Lannisters would be very willing to accuse you and your sisters of assassinating the king. Ariane smiled and gently approached him, placing her hand on Greene's arm. I didn't expect such a dangerous thing to happen in King's Landing, Duke Greene. I truly have no way to repay your kindness. Chapter 403, Sweet Talk. Greene smiled lightly and spoke in a gentle tone. There is no need to be particularly grateful. I just hope that Prince Doran, you, and your sisters can deeply appreciate my kindness. Ariane's eyes glanced over Greene's body, a slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Her voice was slightly hoarse and somewhat charming. I don't mind at all for them. First, let's fully appreciate the Duke's kindness. Greene reached out and grabbed Ariane's hand that was about to descend, sighing helplessly. I have another matter to discuss with you, which may be more worthy of your attention as the heir of Sunspear. Ariane stared at Greene with her enchanting eyes for a moment, bit her lower lip lightly, and said in a low voice, Okay, I will listen carefully. The two of them separated, and Greene handed the winebag that Ariane had tasted back to her. He then slowly walked to the window, leaned against it, and deftly took off another wine bag from his waist. He raised his head, took a sip of wine, paused for a moment, and said slowly, "Tomorrow morning, the three families of Kleb, Lannister, and Tyrell will gather to hold the first royal meeting after King Tommen's official coronation." "It seems important," Arianne said as she walked towards the recliner with a graceful figure. After sitting down gently, she continued, "So, who will take over as Prime Minister?" Greene looked outside through the hazy glass, took another sip of summer red, and said, "I thought it would be Lord Tywin's brother, Kevin Lannister." "It seems unlikely that he will take over his brother's position," Arianne remarked casually, placing the wine bag on the delicate table next to the lounge chair. She then picked up a silver wine flask and poured the bright red wine into a glass. After a moment of silence, Greene looked at the dim moonlight outside the window and spoke slowly. "Although Queen Cersei and Earl Kevin are both blood relatives of Duke Tywin, there are obvious contradictions in their ruling methods, and there are also many conflicts between the two of them in private." Arianne swirled the wine in her glass and said, "It seems that the noble lady of Magetta is not a rational enough ruler." After a pause, she trembled with her ample bosom and suddenly laughed. "I'm sorry, I said something quite boring. Regarding that woman, I should have known she was like this." Ignoring the sarcasm in Arianne's words, Greene continued, "If my guess is correct, at the Royal Council tomorrow, the Duke of Highgarden will be more proactive in seeking the position of Prime Minister of the Seven Kingdoms." Hearing this, Arianne's black pearl-like eyes moved slightly. She raised the cup, took a sip of summer red, and said, "If I were the woman from Magetta, I would never agree easily. This is tantamount to giving the Master of the Red Keep's position to the Tyrell family." Greene turned his head and looked at Arianne, who was leaning on the recliner, and said, "In the confrontation with Tyrell, the only bargaining chip in Queen Cersei's hand is the Queen's crown." "Lannister needs Tyrell more than Tyrell needs Lannister," Arianne said, gently shaking the wine glass in her hand, a gloating smile on her lips. "That woman will definitely lose." The corners of Greene's mouth curved slightly. "Yes, most people will think so. She will definitely lose." "Most people." Arianne blinked her charming eyes. One of her long, smooth legs stretched out from under her skirt and elegantly crossed over the other. She flexed her toes slightly and said, "Perhaps most people will support you sitting on the Prime Minister's chair, Duke Greene." Kleb's priority is to stabilize the rule of the valley, not— Before Greene could finish speaking, Arianne glared at him fiercely. He spread his hands helplessly and said, "Well, you are really keen. This is not the most important reason. To be honest, I just wanted to prevent Kleb from getting caught up in the scuffle between Lannister and Tyrell, because—" Arianne responded, with a smile, "Kleb can't replace any of them yet." Seeing Greene's expression turn slightly embarrassed, Arianne's smile grew even more radiant. Her delicate body trembled as she laughed for a short while. Suddenly, she stopped smiling, her expression turning serious. "I can guess it's the same for your family because of Martell," she said, a coldness flashing in her eyes. "If Martell had enough strength, he wouldn't let Lannister perform so poorly." Greene seemed to be infected by Arianne's burning fire of hatred, and a coldness flashed across his face. "For the former True Dragon Minister," he paused, then continued, "Duke Tywin made the entire Seven Kingdoms deeply feel the cruelty and ruthlessness of Lannister." After saying that, he moved his eyes to the window again, silently took sip after sip of wine, and fell into deep thought. After a while, Arianne's voice slowly sounded from behind Greene. "Tonight, I am more interested in you, Greene Claymore." "It's the Marigold flag." "It is Lord Greene's flag, sir. Sir Ross." The cold moonlight shone in front of the city gate, and the surroundings were so quiet that only the occasional chirping of insects could be heard. Hearing the urgent call, the captain of the King's Guard, who was sleeping next to the battlements, opened his eyes. He was stunned for a moment, then suddenly picked up the helmet placed beside him, as if waking from a dream, and took a big step forward, shouting loudly, "Convey my order and open the city gate! Yes! Open the city gate! Open the city gate!" The shouts echoed on the city wall, breaking the tranquility of the night. The torches swayed in the wind, casting flickering shadows. Approaching the king's gate, Sir Angui in front pulled the reins, turned the horse's head flexibly, galloped forward, and said in a loud voice, "Lord Greene, I saw the field rose flag." Greene's eyebrows slightly raised. He looked up at the full moon hanging high in the night sky, lightly kicked the horse's belly, and said, "Keep going." After riding for a distance, Greene soon saw the one-armed knight standing by the bonfire, Garland Tyrell. The surrounding night was like ink, with only the flame dancing in the darkness, reflecting his figure. He immediately came over, caressed his chest, and said, "Good night, Duke Greene." Greene quickly dismounted, looked Sir Garland up and down, and said, "Good night. Why are you here? Did you miss the time to enter the city?" Sir Garland showed a somewhat helpless look. "The Duke of Metz sent me to invite you. Later, when I rushed to the King's Gate, I realized that you had already left the city, so I stayed here waiting for you." Greene's expression became serious. "Is there an emergency?" Sir Garland came slightly closer and lowered his voice unconsciously, saying, "It is for tomorrow's imperial meeting. My father seems to have obtained important information. I don't know the specific content. He is eager to meet with you." Greene looked at the night sky again, nodded slightly, and said, "I understand. Let's set off immediately." Sir Garland looked at the King's Gate, frowned, and said, "I'll go find the captain of the guard at the King's Gate first." The sound of the gate mechanism echoed in the night, a series of clicks and creaks as the heavy wooden doors slowly opened. The noise broke the stillness, signaling the start of their urgent journey. The heavy city gate of King's Landing creaked as it slowly opened, the sound echoing clearly in the silent night. Sir Garland stood speechlessly, staring in the direction of the gate. Greene, noticing his expression, smiled and said, "When I left the city, I was worried that rushing back tomorrow morning might delay my participation in the royal meeting. So before leaving, I made sure to inform Sir Ross." Sir Garland, unable to hide his emotions, forced a stiff smile and replied, "I will lead the way for you, Duke Greene." Both men mounted their horses and, accompanied by their guards, rode towards the King's Gate. As they approached, Greene pulled the reins, halting his horse. Sir Ross, who had been waiting nearby, quickly stepped forward, bowed deeply, and said, "Lord Greene, it is my great honor to serve you." Sir Ross Raquette was a royal noble. His grandfather, also named Raquette, had served as the commander-in-chief of the Golden Robes during the Dance of the Dragons. When King's Landing fell, he supported Rhaenyra Targaryen, and Queen Rhaenyra rewarded him by making him a royal noble after she ascended the Iron Throne. During Greene's tenure as commander-in-chief of the Golden Robes, he had meticulously reorganized the group, dividing them into the Kleb faction and the Lannister faction. After Greene left office, the Golden Robes quickly formed a new faction dominated by royal nobles. Since Duke Tywin's death and the imprisonment of former commander-in-chief Sir Adam, this new faction had been actively seeking alliances. Although he was the Duke of the Eyrie, Sir Ross was one of those who sought to align with Duke Greene, who also hailed from the royal family. Greene smiled gently, noting that since Duke Tywin's passing, more nobles had begun to gravitate towards him. Many of these nobles had been loyal ministers during the end of the Targaryen dynasty. With the old lion gone, they could finally take action. Greene's identity naturally aligned him with these former loyalists. "Thank you for your time, Sir Ross," Greene said. It was already late at night when they arrived at the Tyrell mansion in Go Lane. The surroundings were quiet, save for the occasional barking of dogs. On the second floor, Greene saw the twin brothers Eric and Eric faithfully guarding a room. They were Lady Oriana's personal guards, simply referred to as left hand and right hand. Greene's brown eyes flickered slightly as he glanced at the surprised Sir Garland. "Brenny, you stay outside," he instructed. The door was pushed open, and Greene entered with Sir Garland. Inside, he saw an elderly woman sitting quietly in front of the fireplace, Lady Olenna Redwine. The room was warm and illuminated by the fire. She looked at them with cloudy eyes, paused, and said, "Garland, my good boy, you have worked hard for me. Go back and rest now. Leave this to me." She then turned to Greene and added, "Duke Greene, thank you for accepting Tyrell's invitation. Please sit down. If you don't mind, you can chat with an old woman for a while." Sir Garland nodded and left, offering a slight apologetic nod to Greene, who responded with a gentle smile. Greene walked over, sat on the chair opposite the fireplace, and said, Did I disturb your rest, Lady Olenna? Your thoughtful politeness reminds me of Willis, far away in Highgarden. He is the least foolish of our family. If it weren't for my own stupidity. She paused, her expression softening. The Duke of Highgarden did not expect you to be busy today. I apologize on his behalf. But let's be honest, your clever eyes tell me there's no need for such excuses. You guessed it. I borrowed the Duke of Highgarden's name to invite you here. She paused again, her tone turning irritable. This afternoon, news of the dispute between Cersei and Kevin reached me. The news spread from the Red Keep. The great Duke of Highgarden drank a lot of wine with joy. At this time, he should be lying on the bed like a wild boar, dreaming about wearing the Prime Minister's necklace. Greene pursed his lips and smiled. If it goes according to normal conditions, this is not just a sweet dream. Yes, if it's normal. Lady Olenna looked at the flames in the fireplace, her eyes deep, the flickering flames reflecting the past. The men of the Seven Kingdoms habitually look down on the women of the Seven Kingdoms, and the men in the Red Keep are even worse. Arrogant or foolish men often lose to the women they underestimate, such as Cersei Lannister in the eyes of Mace Tyrell. She tapped the armrest of her chair with her withered fingers and continued, That is a woman who lost her father and son overnight, yet the boar Duke of Highgarden still regarded her as a typical woman and even tried to force her to submit. Yes, under normal circumstances, my foolish son did nothing wrong, but he doesn't understand women. She is a willful woman. She seemed lost in memories. Before I got married, when I was a young lady of the red wine family, I was taught carefully. But after I married Rose, the father of Duke Mace, I indulged in the pleasures of the bed. Tomorrow, or my family, I threw them all away. The wayward Miss Redwine only cared about enjoying the joy of the moment. So I, an old woman, was also very willful. Hoo-hoo. Greene smiled and said, This also shows that you are very charming, Lady Olenna. Lady Olenna nodded in agreement. I think when I was young, I was as charming as my Margaery. Before I married my foolish son's foolish father, the Targaryen family wanted me to marry into their house, but I did everything to reject it. I don't like their mad bloodline. Greene shrugged. That's a shame. Lady Olenna's eyes moved to Greene, studying her carefully for a moment before speaking slowly. You know Cersei better than anyone else. Perhaps no one in the Seven Kingdoms knows her better than you. Do you see the same danger in that lioness as I do? Hearing this, Greene glanced at Lady Olenna in surprise, then frowned and said, Madam, after all, she just lost her beloved family. If she has offended you, please forgive a poor woman who lost her father and son. Chapter 404, Megta's Breakfast. In the fireplace, the fire crackled softly, casting a warm glow across the room. Because she is a willful woman, do you have willful love and protection, Duke Kleiber? Lady Olenna's voice resonated beside the warm fireplace. Shadows obscured her eyes, making it difficult to discern her true emotions at the moment. Lady Olenna, with a considerate sense of security, there may be no need to persist in the so-called willfulness. Greene replied. Lady Olenna was silent for a moment before speaking again. It seems like your guess is that Tyrell will lose to the lioness. Greene stared at the flames dancing in the fireplace for a while, shook his head slightly, and said, Tyrell will always be the winner, but this time the fruits may take some time to brew. After all, Tommen is only 9 years old. The next morning, the warm sunshine touched the Meg Tower. Mom, I want to go horse riding in the afternoon. King Tommen's childish voice echoed in the dining room. As per the invitation, Greene was accompanying Queen Cersei and King Tommen for breakfast. Cersei frowned slightly. Tommen, I taught you that you are the king and you should not indulge in fun. In the afternoon, I will ask your Uncle Jaime to practice swordsmanship with you. Tommen lowered his chubby face in disappointment and muttered, But I have made appointments with them all. Hearing this, Cersei raised her eyebrows and her tone became slightly sharp. Who are they? Tommen's little head drooped, his chubby cheeks puffed out, and he remained silent against his mother. Greene chewed his food carefully, observing Cersei's rising and falling chest. He picked up his cup and took a sip of summer red, then said slowly, Your Majesty Tommen, the consequences of resisting your mother are often not good. If necessary, I can tell you about my tragic experience of trying to resist my mother when I was a child, so that you can experience fewer shadows in your happy childhood. Queen Cersei glanced at Greene sideways and raised her voice slightly. Tommen, the roses of the South are deliberately trying to please you. You are not young anymore. You have to see their little tricks clearly. Tommen turned his little face to the other side and pursed his lips tightly. Cersei took a deep breath and continued, There are still many doubts about the cause of your brother's death. At this time, as the king, you should keep a polite distance from everyone except the Lannisters until Mom finds the killer. She raised her chin slightly and emphasized, Also, you are the king. You can't condone them. Before she could finish, Tommen finally couldn't help but retort loudly, They are not bad people. They are my good friends. Tommen? Cersei's voice was low, but Tommen trembled under her unwavering gaze, which made her frown even more tightly. Her younger son did not have the fearless kingly heart of her eldest son. After a pause, Tommen's eyes turned red and he cried, Mother, I'm sorry. I shouldn't. Cersei waved her hand impatiently and said coldly, It seems your breakfast is over. She turned to Onis Kettleblack, who was standing aside. Sir, today is the first royal meeting after Tommen's coronation. Although my son is not yet of age, he should wait in advance to show his respect for the ministers. Is it too early to go now? Osney did not dare to voice his thoughts. He stroked his chest, walked to the king's side, and respectfully invited him to move. Seeing Greene's eyes fixed on the direction Tommen and the others left, Cersei took a small spoonful of boiled eggs, put it into her mouth, chewed a few times, and swallowed. She then said casually, My dear, what's wrong? Greene withdrew his gaze, leaned back in his chair, raised the corner of his mouth, and said, Queen Cersei, I think that given His Majesty Tommen's age, he may not yet be able to tell the difference between men and women. Pour me some wine, Cersei said, putting down the golden spoon. Cersei ordered the maid, then too, Arned to Greene and said, Yes, my son is still very naive, but he is a man, and as long as he is a man, he cannot change his nature to be attracted to women, especially those who approach with selfish motives. Greene shrugged and chuckled. For example, like how I am attracted to you? Cersei curled her lips. Considering your incomparable loyalty, I plan to help you and let you realize the right to ask for rewards at will as soon as possible. Cersei showed a charming smile. Greene looked at her for a while, then spoke in a slightly solemn voice. Please, allow me to talk to you alone. The smile on the lioness's face didn't change. She gestured, and soon they were the only ones left in the restaurant. She raised her glass and said, Dear Greene, I was just thinking, when no one can shake my son's iron throne, as long as you want, any time and anywhere, I will be willing to serve you personally. For example, a pleasant breakfast, right here on the table, enjoying the sweat of joy. Seeing Greene's increasingly furrowed eyebrows, she raised the corners of her lips and added, For example, on the iron throne that everyone is in awe of, or on the long table of the royal council. As long as it makes you happy, I can do it. Faced with Cersei's tempting thoughts, Greene's response was a long silence. He stared at the knife on the plate, tapping his fingers on the table one by one. After a while, his fingers suddenly stopped, and he spoke slowly in a slightly hoarse voice. Give me some time to arrange. I can give you all the roses, but I must remind you, I can't stop the hundreds of thousands of people who will riot in King's Landing due to the loss of rose bread. Cersei held her wineglass and snorted. If it weren't for those untouchables, I wouldn't have to fight so hard with Tyrell at the Royal Council. She took a sip of summer red, paused, stared at the bright red liquid in the cup, and said, But there is no retreat today, if Rose is not willing to close her greedy mouth. Her slender fingers clenched the body of the wineglass. They will be greeted by the roar of a lion. Greene's gaze was not hidden. He regretfully looked away from Cersei's curves and said, Your anger may destroy the enemy instantly, but it is too dangerous. Without King's Landing, the Seven Kingdoms will become even more chaotic. The Iron Throne's majesty will be shaken. This result can also be said to be a loss. Cersei barely suppressed her anger, stared at Greene, and said, I will never compromise with Tyrell. Of course, there will be no compromise, Greene nodded. As noble as you are, I will not allow you to compromise. I just provide you with a fair stage to use your wise strategies. Hearing this, Cersei finally became interested. "Oh, tell me." Half an hour later, Greene and Cersei were talking laughing as they continued to enjoy the sumptuous meal. The originally pleasant atmosphere was broken by a sudden movement from the direction of the door. With a clang, the dining room door suddenly burst open, and Sir Jaime, the captain of the Kingsguard, strode in. Behind him was the new gold-robed commander-in-chief, Sir Osfrey, who stumbled against the doorframe. "Jaime." Looking at the man who rushed in angrily, Cersei called Jaime's name coldly, just like the old lion always called them. Pausing, Sir Jaime first unconsciously glanced at Cersei's slightly messy, long, golden curly hair, and then glanced at Greene, who was also looking at him. His hands clenched into fists, the knuckles turning white from exertion. "Cersei," Jaime slowed down his rapid breathing and said with suppressed anger, "I want to hear your explanation for why I saw several fire warlocks in the Prime Minister's tower." "Pyromancers? Is Cersei going to play with wildfire?" Greene's eyebrows raised slightly, and his gaze moved towards the expressionless lioness. A clear voice sounded as Cersei put down the golden goblet. Jaime casually twirled the fork on his plate, picked up his wineglass, and took a slow sip. He then spoke deliberately. "Is this why you disturbed the Queen Regent's meal, Captain of the Iron Guard?" Jaime's fists clenched tighter. "Answer my question, Cersei." "I can satisfy your curiosity, Kingsguard," Cersei replied, lifting her head high. "The hand of the Eternal King has left the Seven Kingdoms forever, and the Prime Minister's tower will naturally be sacrificed for him." Sir Jaime's eyes widened in disbelief. "You want to destroy the Prime Minister's tower? What will happen to the future Prime Minister, Kevin?" At the mention of Kevin's name, Cersei's demeanor changed abruptly. She stood up, her voice filled with fury. "Don't mention that traitor to me. Jaime, you recommended him to me, and I sincerely invited him to be Tommen's king. He threatened me, saying the kingdom must have a regent and that I must return to Casterly Rock. This is the consequence of listening to your advice." "How could it be?" Jaime frowned. In the past, he would have believed Cersei's words without hesitation. But now, after all he had experienced, he no longer trusted her so easily. Cersei, noticing Jaime's doubt, screamed, "You actually think I'm deceiving you? You are letting me down more and more. You would rather believe Kevin, who pretends to be a loyal servant, than believe me?" Greene sat quietly aside, the corners of his mouth twitching slightly. It seemed the lioness had an attack bonus when facing Jaime, making her mind particularly sharp. 16 years ago, Jaime had broken his sacred oath and killed the king to save hundreds of thousands of people in King's Landing. Greene could guess the reason for Jaime's sudden outburst of anger. Pyromancer, wildfire, sacrificing the Prime Minister's tower. These things reminded him of the Mad King, Aerys II. This was the deepest scar in his heart, one that could never heal or be justified. "Why don't you say anything? Have you finally realized your naivety, White Knight? Let me tell you, your innocence." "I will find time to talk to Uncle Caven," Jaime interrupted Cersei coldly, stunning her for a moment. He breathed slowly and said, "Cersei, ever since Greene discovered the eavesdropping secret room in the Prime Minister's study, the Gold Cloaks have been going in with picks and hammers to search. They knocked on the walls and drilled through the floors, discovering dozens of secret passages. They were later delayed by the war. Except for common places such as the study room, bedrooms, and banquet halls, there was no time to repair other places, and they are almost in ruins, so you don't have to burn it down. Maybe there are dozens of undiscovered ones. Jaime, the Prime Minister's tower will be destroyed sooner or later, so you might as well let me use it. I am doing this for the sake of the kingdom." Cersei sat down again, realizing that Jaime was truly slipping out of her control. Her voice gradually calmed, no longer burning with anger. She tried to appear gentle and continued, "If it were up to me, I would rather smash this dirty castle to pieces, move the palace to Lannisport, and govern the kingdom from Casterly Rock, away from the noise and stench." Jaime approached the table, picked up the jug and an empty glass, poured the wine, and took a big sip. The wine flowed down the corner of his mouth. He wiped it casually with the back of his hand and said, "Cersei, your actual idea is more foolish than burning down the Prime Minister's tower. Don't you know that the Seven Kingdoms will only see him as a real king if he stays in this smelly city? Under the rocks of Casterly Rock, he would become the false king who coveted the Iron Throne, just like Stannis Baratheon. This was the first time Jaime mocked Cersei mercilessly, leaving her speechless. Cersei's face turned red with anger. She screamed, "Of course I know that. Are you slow or just plain stupid? I said I want to move the palace. When I mentioned going to the Western region, it was just a thought, not something I actually intended to do." With a thud, Sir Jaime placed his empty glass on the table and said coldly, "I hope that's the case." Hearing this, Cersei roared, "What do you mean by hoping so? White Knight, I suggest you stop your stupid, self-righteous remarks immediately." The tension in the room was palpable as the two glared at each other, their eyes locked in a fierce battle of wills. Greene rubbed his temples, his tone filled with exasperation. "Miss Cersei, Sir Jaime, I must remind you that the Lannisters need to support each other now, not argue over breakfast." Jaime finally broke eye contact and looked away. "The Lannisters will always love each other, my lord," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. He swung his snow-white cloak over his shoulder and strode towards the door. Just before leaving, he turned back and added, "I forgot to tell you, Lady Cersei, I already drove away those pyromancers before I came here." Cersei stood there, stunned, until Jaime's figure completely disappeared. She cursed through gritted teeth. "Jaime, you bastard! Villain! Idiot!" She paced back and forth, her anger simmering. When she finally calmed down, she muttered viciously, "Jaime not only lost his courage in the dungeons of Riverrun, he also lost his brain there." Greene approached, holding a wineglass in each hand. He handed one to Cersei and said, "Queen Cersei, perhaps next time you should tell Jaime your true intentions directly. He isn't actually stupid." Cersei's green eyes flickered with thought. She took the golden, gem-encrusted wineglass and asked, "What are my true intentions?" Greene spread his hands. "By burning down the Prime Minister's tower, you would at least buy yourself enough time to choose a Prime Minister who meets your satisfaction." After a slight pause, he added, "The premise is that today's Imperial meeting must go smoothly." Cersei raised her chin defiantly. "I will not lose." Greene smiled reassuringly. "And I won't let you lose either." Chapter 405, Gentleness and Innocence. Cersei's green eyes lightly scanned Greene's body, the corners of her mouth curling into a meaningful smile. "Your words are always so pleasant, dear Greene. I can't help but reward you in advance, right here." Greene's eyes gleamed as if he were staring at a rare treasure. He raised his glass and said, "The transaction is fair. I have enough patience, my Queen Mother." Cersei raised her glass gracefully. "I'm looking forward to it, dear knight." "Me too." After breakfast, Greene enjoyed a privilege that had previously been reserved only for Jaime, watching the maids dress the lioness in front of the full-length mirror. An hour later, Greene and Cersei met Qyburn, who had been waiting for them in the hall of Maggot Tower. He wore a slight, easy smile and respectfully touched his chest in salute. "Good day, Your Majesty the Queen Mother, Your Grace the Duke." Cersei raised her chin slightly, her tone haughty. "Good day, my intelligence chief." She continued walking, adding, "Let's go together." As they walked, Cersei felt Greene's gaze. She turned her head, her red lips slightly parted. "The old lion doesn't like the chief intelligence officer, but I am different. I need someone who can help me find out the enemy's eyes, and Qyburn happens to have a good eye." Qyburn's intelligence-gathering ability was well recognized by Cersei. He was one of the many ministers she had personally promoted the previous night. Lord Greene had to admit that the lioness's speed was indeed extremely fast. "You have piercing eyes," Greene remarked, glancing back at Qyburn, who smiled gently at him. Greene nodded. "Congratulations, Sir Qyburn." Qyburn stroked his chest again, his tone sincere. "Thank you, Your Grace the Duke. I can't repay you. All I can do is serve Her Majesty the Queen Mother with all my heart." Greene nodded, then turned to Cersei. "He seems quite reliable." A proud look flashed across the lioness's face. "Varys once made everyone think he was indispensable, but not everyone is a fool. When I announce Qyburn as the new intelligence chief, those pests will be busy fawning over him, selling all kinds of information for a little money." Greene agreed. "Yes, gold and silver treasures can shake the loyalty of most people." As they talked, They arrived in front of the carriage. Cersei paused, curling her lips as she looked Greene up and down. Most of them, Greene shrugged. He reached out to help Cersei into the carriage, then took the reins from the attendant and climbed onto the horse. In the small hall of the throne room, the main figures of the Queen Mother's party gathered. Greene's eyes swept over the senile Pycelle, the seemingly chinless Sir Harris Swyver, Kevin's father-in-law, and Lord Giles Rosby, who kept coughing, and Jaime, who stayed alone in a remote corner. Seeing their arrival, the three old men stopped talking and approached with smiles on their faces. Everyone. Cersei glanced at Jaime, who was standing a little further away, and showed a slightly stiff smile. Please forgive me for being late. Sir Harris responded enthusiastically. Wherever we are all servants serving the Queen Mother. It is our great honor to wait for your arrival. Cersei showed some satisfaction. Qyburn, please come forward. Everyone, he is the chief intelligence officer I appointed. The sleepy-eyed Grandmeister Pycelle immediately widened his eyes, his old face turning purple. Qyburn was deprived of the bachelor's necklace by the Citadel. How can such a person become a minister? Your Majesty, this person should be expelled. His standing here is a stain on the Red Keep. The old Meister spat in front of her, and Cersei said coldly, Shut up. If you can't calm down, I'll expel you. After you, the lioness said, as she continued to berate the old man. Meanwhile, Greene approached Sir James. He nodded towards Sir Harris and said, It seems he's here for the position your father left. James followed his gaze and replied with a complicated expression. He doesn't have the capability. He added mentally, but Cersei might prefer someone weak and incompetent. After a pause, Sir James's green eyes met Greene's. He suddenly asked, Is it sweet? Greene was taken aback for a moment and raised an eyebrow slightly. What are you referring to? Sir James looked at Greene with the eyes of an experienced swordsman assessing a novice. He said seriously, Look at me, take it easy. After a moment of silence, Greene scratched his cheek with his index finger and said, I suddenly feel that the white robe suits you very well, James. James glanced sideways at Greene, paused, and asked, How are the preparations going? It may take a few days, Greene replied, then asked doubtfully, Why do you care about me so much? James fell silent, lost in thought. He sighed slightly and said, Looking back on the past, it seems you always make the right choice. Hearing this, Greene's lips curved slightly. Are you interested in following me to quell the war in the Seven Kingdoms? I happen to be short of a white knight to hold my horse for me. James glanced at Greene sideways again and said, That's truly an honor. After a few more casual exchanges, the smile on James's face suddenly disappeared. His eyes met the lioness's, and she began to walk towards them. As she approached, Cersei's tone was filled with anger. James, you'd better find all those pyromancers. Otherwise, forget it. I'll tell Harlan, the president of the Alchemist Guild, to send a few more people over. Jaime shrugged. Cersei, I just discovered today that my sword is very good at driving people away. You, Cersei snapped, but before another argument could erupt, Greene silently excused himself. He soon encountered Sir Harris, who approached him with a slightly flattering smile. Dear Duke Kleb, please allow me to disturb you for a moment, Sir Harris said. Greene nodded slightly. Sir Swiffer. King Joffrey and Prime Minister Tywin died together in an accident on the same night. This is truly tragic. Sir Harris sighed. The kingdom still needs someone to stand up. Dear Duke, Lannister and Crab are like family, and I don't want to hide it from you. My son-in-law, alas, he loves his brother and is too grief-stricken to serve the kingdom for the time being. After a pause, he continued, In such a critical time, I hope to stand up on behalf of my son-in-law and serve King Tommen, Queen Cersei, and all of you, if I can shoulder the heavy responsibility of stabilizing the Seven Kingdoms. The bald old man leaned in slightly and lowered his voice. I promise I will listen to Kleb's voice. Greene patted Sir Harris's arm. Very good. Your courage is admirable. I look forward to the day you serve the Seven Kingdoms. As everyone continued to chat, the Chamberlain hurried to Cersei's side and whispered in her ear. After listening, a sneer flashed across Cersei's face. She glanced at the people present and said, Everyone, the distinguished guests from House Tyrell have arrived. Please follow me. Throne room. As the door behind the Iron Throne slowly opened, the Lord Chamberlain announced, "Welcome, the Duchess of Casterly Rock, Warden of the Realm, the Queen Regent, Her Majesty Cersei Lannister." Cersei walked at the front with her head held high, and the others followed behind her. Hearing the commotion, the Duke of Metz, who was standing in front of the high, narrow window, glanced at his mother sitting at the end of the long table of the royal council. He then put his hands behind his back and looked at the visitors with a majestic air. The kingdom's finances. His voice was weak, and his explanations were filled with vague justifications and half-hearted promises. "The treasury is nearly empty," Earl Gales said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We have debts to the Iron Bank, and the crown's expenses have far exceeded our income." Cersei's eyes narrowed as she listened, her fingers tapping impatiently on the armrest of the king's chair. "And what do you propose we do about it, Earl Gales?" she asked, her tone icy. Earl Gales hesitated, glancing nervously at the other council members. "We could increase taxes, Your Grace, or perhaps seek new loans." Lady Olenna scoffed, her voice cutting through the room like a knife. "Increase taxes? On whom? The small folk are already starving. And new loans? From where? The Iron Bank will not lend us more without significant collateral." Cersei's gaze shifted to Lady Olenna, her expression hardening. "Do you have a better suggestion, Lady Olenna?" The old woman smiled, her eyes gleaming with a cunning light. "Perhaps we should look closer to home for our solutions. The Tyrells have always been generous supporters of the crown. Maybe it's time for the Lannisters to show the same generosity." Cersei's face flushed with anger, but before she could respond, Greene interjected. "We need a practical solution, one that doesn't rely on the charity of our noble houses. Earl Gales, what other options do we have?" Earl Gales fumbled with his papers, clearly flustered. "We could cut back on royal expenditures, Your Grace. Reduce the size of the court, limit the number of feasts and tournaments." Cersei's lips curled into a sneer. "You expect me to live like a pauper while we sort out this mess? Unacceptable." The room fell into an uneasy silence, the tension palpable. Finally, the Duke of Metz spoke up. "Perhaps we should consider a more aggressive approach. There are lands and titles that could be seized, assets that could be liquidated." Cersei's eyes lit up with interest. "Go on." The Duke of Metz leaned forward, his voice low and conspiratorial. "There are many lords who have grown fat and complacent, hoarding wealth that rightfully belongs to the crown. If we were to redistribute some of that wealth, it could solve our financial problems quite effectively." Lady Olenna's eyes narrowed, but she said nothing, her expression thoughtful. Cersei nodded slowly, a smile spreading across her face. "An excellent suggestion, Duke of Metz. We will discuss the specifics later. For now, let us move on to other matters." The rest of the meeting proceeded in a similar fashion, with Cersei dominating the conversation and dismissing any suggestions that didn't align with her own plans. By the time it was over, the council members were visibly exhausted, their patience worn thin. As they filed out of the room, Lady Olenna lingered behind, her eyes fixed on Cersei. "You play a dangerous game, Queen Mother," she said quietly. "Be careful that you don't overplay your hand." Cersei's smile was cold and unyielding. "I always know exactly what I'm doing, Lady Olenna. You would do well to remember that." With that, she turned and swept out of the room, leaving Lady Olenna to ponder the implications of the day's events. The royal family's financial revenue was a pressing concern. The Chancellor of the Exchequer looked anxious as he detailed the mounting debts. Grand Maester Pycelle followed, taking twice as long to explain that the crow's nest in the Maester's tower was nearly half empty. His trembling voice echoed through the hall, irritating everyone present. Jaime's brows furrowed deeply, and Cersei, who had orchestrated the meeting, couldn't help but interrupt. "Let's move on to the next topic," she said, ordering the imperial waiter to pour wine. "Has the church elected a new archbishop yet?" Pycelle, who was just about to sit down, straightened himself up again. His chain of office clinked softly as he replied, "Your Majesty, it is said that there are many outstanding candidates, so they have been unable to reach a consensus." "How tedious," Cersei muttered impatiently, taking a sip of summer red. "Pycelle, in the name of the Royal Council, recommend Bishop Alito to be the High Septon." "As you command, Your Majesty the Queen Mother," Pycelle responded. Cersei then turned her attention to Count Mattis, who was seated to the left of Lady Olenna. Next topic, my Lord of the Sea. I would like to know the status of the reconstruction of the royal fleet. Count Mattis, though suspecting some accident had occurred, dutifully reported on the progress of new ship construction and sailor training. Next topic, Cersei commanded. Lady Olenna's voice cut through the room. Queen Mother Lannister, when will this charade end? We both know these issues are not why we are gathered here. She leaned forward, the wrinkles on her face deepening. An old woman's body is not as resilient as a young one's. In Highgarden, I could bathe once or twice a day, but in this King's Landing that reeks of filth, I must wash at least twice, preferably 3 times, to be presentable. Cersei's impatience was palpable. What are you trying to say, madam? Lady Olenna's eyes were piercing, her tone unusually kind. This so-called City of Kings is unbearable for someone like me. It is not worth clinging to. If the Queen Mother is dissatisfied with the alliance between Tyrell and Lannister, I will respect your wishes and speak well of you in the south. But I do not wish for this meaningless waiting and dealing to erode the fragile friendship we have built. The room fell silent, the weight of Lady Olenna's words hanging in the air. Chapter 406, Gentleness and Innocence, End. Very good. I used to fully believe that, due to my father's sincerity, the friendship between the Lannisters and the Tyrells was extremely solid. But now it seems, the Tyrells don't seem to cherish this relationship that is known to all the 7 kingdoms, Cersei said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. In Greene's sight, Cersei was sitting there, her demeanor chaotic, but her words made the Duke of Metz, who maintained a majestic expression, flash a look of panic for a moment. Lady Olenna's laughter rang out again. Yes, I also firmly believed that the friendship between the Tyrells and the Lannisters was unshakable. Until I saw the incomparable and noble Queen Mother, I, an old woman, realized that we were being sentimental. The Duke of Metz's voice then sounded slowly, as if he were sighing. Since the lioness feels that the kingdom does not need the Rose's continued contribution, then, I support Lady Olenna's choice. I really miss the blooming fields in the south. He stroked the triangular beard on his chin, and sooner or later the arrogant lion would have a good feel of his art of war. Cersei's eyes coldly glanced at the Tyrell mother and son who dared to threaten her. At this moment, Greene's voice broke the tension. I once taught His Majesty Tommen's sword skills. He is beloved for his wisdom, and more importantly, he has compassion for the weak. Jaime, who had been acting as a statue, suddenly spoke up, his voice slightly teasing. Duke Greene, things are going well ahead, but as far as I know, some people think that the king should not have sympathy for the weak, as it is a sign of cowardice. Pity is not the same as sympathy, Greene replied, glancing at Cersei, who was glaring at Jaime angrily. He looked around at everyone present, sighed slightly, and said, The weak I am referring to are those other than the strong. And, except for all the adults here, how many strong men can there be in the 7 kingdoms who don't need mercy? He added, excessive compassion will produce unnecessary sympathy, but just the right amount of compassion is a solid foundation for justice. The king's justice is the most precious to most people, because most people in the 7 kingdoms are made up of weak people who hope for justice in the world. All kinds of eyes were focused on him, and Greene spread his hands helplessly and said, I'm sorry. It seems to be off topic. Maybe because I saw too many refugees when I passed the King's Gate yesterday. His eyes moved to Lady Olenna and the Duke of Metz. Dear Lady Olenna, respected Duke of Metz, King's Landing praises and thanks House Tyrell for their bread every day. After a pause, he continued, Please forgive me for being presumptuous. Everyone knows very well that if today's imperial meeting cannot successfully reach some crucial consensus, King's Landing, especially the refugees gathered outside the city, will soon. I can't even imagine the cruel consequences of losing Rose's bread. At that time, the wind will blow, bringing not coolness, but the smell of death. Greene's eyes swept across everyone again, and he spread out his hands, saying, If such a cruel thing really happens, who sitting here can feel at ease? Lady Olenna's voice broke the brief silence at the conference table. Duke Highgarden, just now, before the distinguished Duke Greene spoke, what were we talking about? Hearing this, the Duke of Metz stroked his beard with a heavy face. He couldn't remember. Count Modus coughed lightly and said, Lady Olenna, we were talking about the deep friendship between roses and lions. Lady Olenna was seriously stunned for a while, then slowly said, Oh yes, I, an old woman, am getting older and older, and my memory is getting worse and worse. Glancing at her son, she added, Forget it, since we have already talked about the Rose family's bread, there is no need to talk about the previous topic again. Queen Cersei, Duke Greene, my lords, I want to tell you solemnly, the bread at Rose's house is not endless. Greene tapped his chin thoughtfully, and then turned his attention back to the discussion at hand. Yes, Lady Olenna, your concerns are valid, Greene said, shifting his gaze from Cersei. The Vale, having just endured a war, lacks the surplus bread to support others, but it is still willing to contribute to the kingdom. His brown eyes flickered slightly. Earl Gales, could you please tell me, if food can be supplied continuously and stably, how long will it take for King's Landing to return to normal order? The finance minister coughed several times before responding. Your Majesty, at least half a year. Please forgive my negligence. New refugees arrive outside the city every day, making it difficult to provide accurate information. This is just my general estimate. Greene nodded slightly and continued. If the Crabclaw Peninsula and the Vale absorb some refugees, could this time be shortened? Earl Gales hesitated for a moment before replying. Of course, my Lord Duke. Greene shook his head. These measures will indeed relieve the pressure on King's Landing, but they will also accelerate the influx of more refugees. Most of the refugees outside the city come from the war-torn Riverlands. Only by completely ending the turmoil in the Riverlands can we address the root cause of King's Landing's problems. Therefore, I am willing to spend 200,000 gold dragons to purchase excess grain from the nobles in the Riverlands and the royal territory. I will personally assist Earl Kevin of Harrenhal in farming and sowing to restore the farmland, eradicate the bandits who are causing chaos, and do our best to restore stability to the Haegian area as soon as possible. As Greene enjoyed the shocked, surprised, and confused looks from everyone, Cersei's voice cut through the silence. Thank you, Duke Greene, for your selfless contribution to the kingdom. Later, I will have King Tommen personally express the royal family's sincere gratitude to you. Greene nodded slightly. I heard that the new Warden of the West, Sir Devon Lannister, is marching towards Riverrun with an army. I have a small request. I hope that, in the name of the Royal Council, we can order Sir Devon to attack Riverrun as soon as possible. This may be a bit demanding, but for the stability of the kingdom, we must urge our brave and fearless warriors. Cersei thought for a moment, then nodded. The Tully Rebellion should have ended long ago. Pycelle, arrange this matter. Convey my order to Devon Lannister and ensure that within a month, the head of the Blackfish is placed on the small council table. As you command, Your Majesty the Queen Mother, Pycelle replied. Cersei then turned her attention to Duke Mace, who was staring at Greene with confusion. Duke Mace, as far as I know, a small portion of the refugees come from the Stormlands, where people are panicking. As the guardian of the southern border, will you take any action? She swirled her wineglass, a smirk playing on her lips. Not long ago, Kleb's army occupied Dragonstone Island, turning Stannis into a completely homeless dog. Duke Greene has fulfilled his promise to my father. She took a sip of summer red and continued, Will you continue to fulfill the promise you made to my father and lead the Tyrell army to march towards Storm's End? Duke Mace stared sharply at the Lannister lioness for a moment before turning his gaze to Lady Olenna. Thank you, Lord Highgarden, for being willing to listen to the old woman's advice. Lady Olenna straightened her upper body, trembling slightly. Queen Cersei, the Tyrell family values their promises. Rest assured, we will act accordingly. But I must ask, will you proud lions also fulfill your promises? Cersei clenched her hand under the table, and Jaime glanced at her, noting her silence. He sighed quietly, understanding the weight of the promises and the challenges that lay ahead. The captain of the Kingsguard rose from his chair, placed a hand on his chest, and said earnestly, Dear Madam, Lannister is absolutely committed. Rest assured, we will not break our promises. Thank you, Captain of the Kingsguard, for your assurance. You are indeed handsome. No wonder I heard your name from those tedious women every day when I was in the South. Lady Olenna remarked, her gaze fixed on the host opposite her. She paused before continuing. So, Your Majesty Cersei Lannister, do you share your brother's sentiments? Cersei shot a cold glance at Jaime, who had taken it upon himself to speak. After a few moments of visible frustration, she replied, My son is still too young. Lady Olenna leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. Oh, if I heard correctly, are you suggesting breaking the engagement between Tyrell and Lannister? Queen Cersei frowned, her tone laced with irritation. Madam, didn't you hear me clearly? I mean, Tommen is not old enough to marry yet. Lady Olenna stood up, her wrinkled hands pressing against the table as she stared at Cersei. Then please tell me, how is this excuse any different from directly terminating the engagement? Cersei's frown deepened, a hint of anger creeping into her voice. When Tommen comes of age, he will fulfill his engagement with Tyrell. Lady Olenna's eyes narrowed further. And what if, by then, the Queen Regent changes her mind? What will become of my poor granddaughter? Cersei's fury was palpable. Lady Redwine, do not insult my promise with such baseless assumptions. A Lannister always pays their debts. Lady Olenna held her gaze, her tone dripping with sarcasm. I can already sense your dissatisfaction with the marriage contract between Tyrell and Lannister. Do you expect me, an old woman, to place my trust in a promise made by Tywin's daughter? Cersei suddenly slammed the table and stood up, her voice a roar of anger. Olenna Redwine, how dare you question my promise? I am the Queen Regent of the Seven Kingdoms. The room fell silent, the tension thick in the air. Lady Olenna remained calm, her response cold and unwavering. Yes, Cersei Lannister, you heard correctly. This old woman believes you will not keep your promise. Cersei's eyes blazed with fury, her breathing heavy and rapid. She glared at the old woman, her voice a slow, deliberate hiss. Jaime, Greene. The lioness's rage was evident to all. The Duke of Metz hurried to his mother's side, his tall and stout frame adopting a protective stance. Count Mattis arrived a moment later, whispering urgently, I'll call the green robe in. Lady Olenna did not respond, but she reached out to stop Count Mattis from leaving. Hearing Cersei's call, Jaime frowned and said, Cersei. Greene's voice cut through the tension, rising slightly. Queen Cersei, please allow me to speak. He stood up and moved to Cersei's side, placing his hands on her shoulders. Please, let me speak first. Cersei tried to shake off Greene's hands, but they remained firm. Jaime also approached, his voice calm. Cersei, impulsiveness won't solve anything. Realizing she couldn't break free, Cersei ceased her struggle. She raised her chin, took a deep breath, and said coldly, You two can leave. Greene withdrew his hands and walked to the center of the imperial meeting table. He smiled gently and said, Everyone, please sit down. Once everyone was seated, he began to speak slowly. If no tragic accident occurs, tomorrow should be the wedding of the king and the queen. The guests invited to the wedding have already gathered in King's Landing. This event is not just for them, but to unite the hearts of the Seven Kingdoms. At this time, the marriage contract between Lannister and Tyrell has become crucial. Extremely important, but... Greene paused before continuing. His Majesty Tommen is only 9 years old. If he holds a wedding with Miss Margaery at this age, it might diminish the grandeur of this Seven Kingdoms event, don't you think? Humph, that's exactly what I meant, Lady Olenna interjected, ignoring Cersei's presence. She turned to Greene and said, It seems your clever tongue has a solution to this small problem? Greene shrugged slightly, glancing around at the assembled guests. Boys will soon become men. Let this wedding of 770,000 gold dragons become the engagement ceremony of His Majesty Tommen and Miss Margaery. An engagement ceremony worth 170,000 gold dragons is unprecedented enough. The Duke of Metz stroked his beard, glancing at his mother who was leaning back in her chair. When she nodded slightly, he addressed Cersei. Your Majesty the Queen Mother, do you agree to Duke Greene's proposal? 7 years is enough time, Cersei thought, forcing a stiff and perfunctory smile. Isn't this a very good idea? Greene nodded to both Queen Cersei and the Duke of Metz, then continued, It seems we have reached our first consensus. After the grand and unprecedented engagement ceremony, the Duke of Metz and I will go to the Riverlands and the Stormlands as promised. During that time, the Red Keep and the Seven Kingdoms will be cared for by Queen Cersei, King Tommen, and Lady Margaery. The tenderness of women combined with the innocence of children. I believe this is the best comfort we can offer the Seven Kingdoms. 4 days later, the magnificent engagement ceremony was held in the great sept of Baelor. Tommen and Margaery sat side by side at the main seat on the high platform, accepting the blessings of the guests. When Queen Cersei appeared, Greene noticed Margaery holding the little king's hand and rising from the table. They approached Cersei, and Margaery kissed the lioness on the cheek, reaching out for a hug. She smiled sweetly and shyly. "Your Majesty the Queen Mother, I will treat you as my second mother. I pray that we can love each other and be closely united by your lovely son." Cersei's chest heaved fiercely before she reluctantly raised the corners of her lips. "My 2 sons are very cute." A hint of sadness appeared on Margaery's blushing face. "Joffrey was also among my prayers. I once loved him madly, but unfortunately, fate deprived me of the honor of accompanying him." "Very well, I will bless you," Cersei said, turning away and walking towards her seat. She worried that if she stayed any longer, she might not be able to resist giving Tommen's extremely hypocritical fiancé a solid slap in front of all the guests, right on the high platform. Greene observed everything, guessing the conversation between Cersei and Margaery, and smiled silently. At that moment, Earl Kevin approached with a wineglass. "Duke Greene, I received a reply yesterday. There has been progress regarding the whereabouts of Asha Greyjoy." Chapter 407. The blonde girl Greene's eyebrows raised slightly. "Do you have a specific location?" Kevin Lannister nodded and led Greene to a quieter corner. "Someone spotted her ship, the Black Wind, near the waters of Ten Tower City." Ten Tower City was the seat of the ruling family of Harlaw Island, one of the Iron Islands. Though not the largest, Harlaw Island was the richest and most populous among them. Greene pondered for a moment. "I remember that Roderick Harlaw, the leader of Harlaw Island, is Asha Greyjoy's uncle." Earl Kevin nodded, pausing to take a sip of wine. "It's said that after Balon Greyjoy's unexpected death, her mother has been living in Ten Tower City." Greene also took a sip of wine. "It seems she will soon receive the hospitality of the Red Keep. If there is new information, a messenger crow will be sent from Lannisport. I will have my servant convey the news to you," Kevin said, noticing Greene's slightly surprised expression. He smiled gently. "The friendship between Lannister and Kleb is no less than that of Tyrell, and perhaps there will be more possibilities in the future. Unfortunately, I had hoped you would take over my brother's responsibilities, but my voice is not supported by others for the time being." Sighing, he looked into Greene's clear brown eyes and continued. "Cersei likes to think of herself as her father. She doesn't let herself cry, and mistakenly believes her father's death hasn't affected her. In reality, she underestimates the deep grief in her heart, which will lead her to do many irrational things. For the sake of her love for you, I hope you can be more patient with her. My niece is thoughtful." His eyes softened. "This is also for the friendship between Lannister and Kleb. Please believe me, our 2 families can be friends forever." Greene raised his glass. "Count Kevin, thank you for your honesty. I will do my best to protect her." With a friendly smile, Earl Kevin also raised his glass. "I will set off tomorrow. The next time we meet may be at Harrenhal." His tone turned slightly teasing. "I will try to arrange the stones there as neatly as possible before you arrive." After Earl Kevin left, Greene remained where he was, leaning against a stone pillar. His eyes wandered towards Cersei, just in time to witness an amusing scene. A few days ago, everyone around the royal conference table had been greeting each other. The Chancellor of the Exchequer, Lord Gales, seemed to want to kiss Cersei's hand gracefully, but ended up using her fingers as a handkerchief. As a result, the lioness' chest heaved with irritation, and everyone behind her refrained from kissing her hands, opting to kiss her cheeks instead. Greene's brown eyes shifted to Jaime Lannister, who was patrolling diligently, ensuring no one was hiding behind the colorful curtains. Greene's gaze continued to move until it suddenly paused. He scanned the area and noticed a figure standing in the shadows, holding a wineglass with a faint smile on his lips. The figure looked suspiciously villainous. To avoid any misunderstanding, Greene lifted his feet and headed towards the high platform under the dazzling sunlight. In front of the king's table, the red-faced Duke of Metz led everyone in a toast. He smiled at Marjorie, raised his golden wineglass, and his voice rang out like a bell. To His Majesty the King and his most charming fiancée. The people around raised their glasses and shouted, clinking them together in celebration. Queen Cersei, who had just sat down, raised her glass symbolically in response. Then came Lord Paxter Redwine of Kingting Island, Lady Olenna's nephew, who took his turn to toast. Paxter's body swayed as his eyes swept across Margaery, Tommen, and Cersei. He smiled drunkenly, raised his glass, and shouted loudly, "For our two queens, past and future." Tommen and Margaery expressed their gratitude together while Cersei reluctantly took a sip of wine. The room was filled with laughter and celebration, but Cersei knew that sooner or later, tears would follow. Cough! Tom coughed, and Cersei frowned, looking over. She saw her youngest son's pale face, and her heart suddenly stopped. It reminded her of Joffrey's face lying lifeless in the bathtub. Nothing could happen to her son. The lioness would never allow it. Pushing the maid behind Tommen away, Cersei reached out to slap him on the back in panic. Seeing this, Margaery comforted Cersei softly. "He just choked on the wine. He will be fine soon." The commotion caused the surrounding area to gradually quiet down, and everyone's eyes turned towards them. Margaery took Tommen's hand, kissed the back of it, and said, "My little fiancé, please drink slowly. Look, you are scaring Her Majesty the Queen Mother to death." Tommen glanced at Cersei in embarrassment and said, "I'm sorry, Mother." Cersei's disgusted eyes were all focused on Margaery. If it were Joffrey, he would never allow these people to offend her. "My poor Joffrey, Mother will definitely avenge you." Moisture filled her eyes, but Cersei raised her chin slightly. She couldn't let them see her tears. "Everyone, please allow me to leave for a while." After saying that, Cersei stood up and crossed the Kingsguard, striding towards the rear. Cersei asked the maids in Kingsguard who had followed her to leave and stood alone in the corridor, with a lone tallow candle hanging high above her head. The old lion could make everyone bow down, and she could do it too, as long as she was given a little more time. She allowed herself to sob softly, and then another. A woman can cry, but not the air of the old lion. Cersei exhaled slowly and wiped the tears hanging on her cheeks with the back of her hand. "Cersei." A sudden voice behind her made Cersei's body tremble slightly. She immediately turned her head and saw the person clearly, but a look of disappointment that could not be hidden flashed across her face. It was Kevin. She was so ridiculous that she mistook the traitor's voice for that of the old lion. Although the two of them were brothers, they were completely incomparable. She rubbed her temples with her thumbs and said, "Uncle Kevin." Kevin stood in front of Cersei with his hands behind his back. Seeing him looking at her, she said, "The candle smoke hurts my eyes." After saying that, she took out her handkerchief and wiped her cheeks dry in a few strokes. Kevin looked away, nodded slightly, and said, "I'm surprised that Duke Greene doesn't seem to be interested in the position of Prime Minister at all." Cersei put away the handkerchief and said coldly, "I saw you went to find him." Earl Kevin frowned. "Cersei, aren't you surprised? With the current situation, why would he give up such a good opportunity?" Cersei sneered and said, "My uncle, maybe Greene has hidden thoughts about the position of Prime Minister, but don't forget where he comes from. It is the Crabclaw Peninsula with only swamps and valleys. Moreover, he was just a baron with a small territory 2 years ago. It is surprising that a baron with such a small territory can occupy the entire valley." Lifting her chin slightly, she continued, "Compared to stabilizing the rule of the valley, what is the position of Prime Minister? If it weren't for me, he would have rushed back to the Eyrie to hold the wedding, instead of taking the initiative to go to the Riverlands to help you manage the ruins." An imperceptible look of contempt flashed through the lioness's green eyes. "My uncle, you should know very well." Kevin understood how crucial the birth of an heir was to Greene at this time, but he had to make it difficult for him to continue contributing for Cersei's sake. "I hope you won't let me down again," Cersei said. Kevin pursed his lips, listening to her words before speaking slowly. "Cersei, maybe I shouldn't have come here to disturb you." His hand behind his back clenched into a fist before he loosened it and continued. "Another surprise is the sincerity shown by the Rose family. Remember, that family is not weak. You and Marguerite Tyrell can have disputes in the court game, but you can never bully them. He paused, observing Cersei's unyielding expression. Shaking his head tiredly, he added, I really shouldn't have come to disturb you. Cersei snorted coldly. Uncle, because you are a Lannister, I will not deprive you of the opportunity to contribute to the kingdom. If you can get rid of the Riverland refugees in King's Landing as soon as possible, I will consider appointing you as the Lord of Casterly Rock. Kevin closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and exhaled slowly. Cersei, your understanding of power is always so naive, he said, before turning and leaving without waiting for her response. Cersei's angry voice echoed behind him. If you dare to offend me again, I won't mind letting you taste the darkness of a prison. Early the next morning, outside the Gate of the Gods, Jaime's snowy white cloak floated in the air. He glanced at the team in front of him, spurred his horse, and accelerated towards Kevin. Uncle Kevin! As he approached, Jaime tightened the reins, dismounted, and asked eagerly, Why did you leave suddenly? Captain, don't you know that I am going to Harrenhal to cultivate the land? Count Kevin replied, mounting his horse and ignoring his nephew. Let's go, he said, kicking the horse's belly. Jaime spread his hands, resigned, and mounted his horse again, riding side by side with his uncle. Uncle, I thought you would leave the errands to Lancel and stay in the Red Keep. Kevin pulled the reins, adjusting the direction of his horse, and said angrily, Didn't Duke Greene say that the 7 kingdoms should be governed with the gentleness of women and the innocence of children? Which one do I belong to? Jaime replied helplessly, Uncle, even I understand that rule cannot be so idealistic. The 7 kingdoms cannot do without your care. Earl Kevin frowned in displeasure. Spare your talk. Why are you here? Did Her Majesty Cersei send you to deliver the final order? I'm not here for Cersei. Even though we are twins, I have a beard and she does not, so I am me and she is her, Jaime said. Earl Kevin gave him a complicated look, and Jaime continued, I'm here for you, Uncle. King Tommen needs your guidance, and I want to ask you to stay. One wants to expel, the other wants to retain, Earl Kevin said, pulling the reins. Sir, I have no interest in participating in the game between you two. That's enough. You can go back to guard your king. There was accusation in his uncle's words, and Jaime explained seriously. Sir Balon Swan is guarding the king this morning. He is a loyal and brave knight. Sir Kevin snorted and mocked. In the past, whenever we mentioned the White Knight, there was no need to emphasize the word loyalty and bravery. Jaime felt his uncle's displeasure deeply and did not argue, determined to restore the former glory of the Kingsguard. He went straight to the point. Uncle Kevin, I heard something. I suggest you make peace with Cersei. I will. Lord Kevin interrupted coldly. Did I go to war with her? How come I didn't know? Jaime continued to persuade. You know better than I do that disputes within the Lannister family will only benefit our enemies. Kevin snorted again. Even if there are disputes, it's not my fault. Cersei wants to rule everything. Very good, I fully agree. I will hand over all the affairs of the kingdom to her, and I will go to Harrenhal to enjoy peace. Jaime realized his uncle was more stubborn than he had anticipated. He decided to change his approach. Compared to Harrenhal, Uncle, you might consider going to Riverrun for inspection. The 20,000 new Lannister troops there are still lacking a wise commander. Kevin's voice was filled with anger. Why should I go there? Riverrun is under the unified command of Sir Devon, the new Warden of the West. Jaime shrugged. Since you don't want to talk, I'll shut up. I'll visit you in Harrenhal in a while, and then we'll continue the conversation. He looked around and added, Uncle, are you bringing too few guards? I heard that the Riverlands are quite dangerous. Kevin glanced at Jaime coldly. Are you threatening me, sir? Jaime was taken aback. Just reminding you, the Riverlands are dangerous. Lord Kevin pulled the reins and said, When I hanged countless bandits and robber knights, you were still in your cradle. Sir, if you are worried that I will personally duel with them, there is no need to worry. Not every Lannister is vain. Jaime sighed helplessly. Uncle, I just want to add more guards for you. Lord Kevin's deep green eyes moved to Jaime. No need for your generosity. My sworn knights have set out on my orders, and they will meet me before I enter the Riverlands. Jaime, go back. I have to hurry. Jaime looked north with regret. Okay, I won't waste your time anymore. Before I leave, I want to tell you that you are the most suitable knight to sit in the Prime Minister's chair in the Seven Kingdoms. Your sister knows my conditions. Tell Cersei that my conditions remain unchanged. Please tell her by her pillow. Kevin kicked his horse's belly and left, followed by a dozen red-robed guards. Jaime stayed there in a daze, watching Kevin's team disappear into the distance. Barris Tavern on the King's Road, Chapter 132. Thank you very much, sir. May the gods bless you. Sitting on his saddle and looking down, Kevin couldn't help but take a closer look at the excited girl holding the purse tightly. She had the same long, curly golden hair as his niece. Recalling the little girl from the past, she had been quirky and lively, but as she matured, the sweetness of her youth had faded. Thank you. The blonde girl was not as fair as his niece, nor did she have gorgeous clothes and jewelry, but he could tell she tried her best to dress up every day. She exuded the vitality that belonged to her age. She enthusiastically introduced Kevin to the past glory of their tavern. King Robert, the Duke of Winterfell, the Duke of the Eyrie, they once dined together in our store, and the distinguished ladies who accompanied them. Oh, my father went to a nearby farm to buy vegetables. He will be back soon. There are not many customers at this time, and it will definitely not disturb your rest. Look at me. I will clean the room for you right away. In fact, I already. Seeing the blonde girl trotting away with her skirt lifted, Earl Kevin couldn't help but show a kind look. At that time, his niece also liked to run around. Chapter 408, The Blonde Girl. Kevin stood outside the door, hesitating to enter. After a long wait, the guests inside began to leave one by one, their faces alight with joy. Some clutched golden dragons in their hands, murmuring in disbelief, "God bless you." An attendant approached Kevin and respectfully, "Sir, you can go in now." Earl Kevin slowly raised his eyes to the sky, where dark clouds threatened rain. His thoughts drifted away. If only back then, Alice II had agreed to marry his niece to Prince Rhaegar, perhaps the tragic events that followed could have been avoided. War might never have broken out. Cersei would have given Rhaegar the son he desired, a little lion with a silver mane and purple eyes. Lyanna Stark had a wild beauty, but no torch could outshine the vibrant light of the West. Rhaegar might not have even glanced at her a second time. In such a scenario, the absurdity between Jaime and Cersei would never have occurred. Kevin shook his head slightly. Perhaps Tywin's death, without knowing the full extent of the chaos, was a mercy from the gods. Sighing, Earl Kevin walked into the tavern, knowing well that his thoughts were just the unrealistic musings of an old man reminiscing about the past. The reality was that Prince Rhaegar married Princess Aelia of Dorne, Lyanna Stark died, and Cersei married Robert Baratheon. Inside the tavern, Earl Kevin had barely sat down when the sound of hurried footsteps echoed. A blonde girl, who had been cleaning the room, descended the wooden stairs quickly. Shortly after, she returned with food, barbecue and ale, for Count Kevin. To make her tasks easier, the blonde girl had rolled up her sleeves, revealing slender arms with slightly darker, wheat-colored skin that glowed with vitality. Watching the busy girl, Earl Kevin asked, "My child, what should I call you?" The blonde girl placed the last plate on the table and timidly adjusted her slightly messy gray dress. "Noble sir, my name is Leah," she said, clearing her throat to ease her tension. Her clear blue eyes, which seemed to speak volumes, blinked nervously. "Everyone calls me Little Leah, and you can call me that too." Earl Kevin smiled kindly and said in a gentle voice, "I remember, Little Leah. Thank you for your thoughtful service." The attendant, noticing the lord's improved mood, took out a small purse containing 7 golden dragons and handed it to Leah. "This is a reward from Lord Lannister." Feeling the weight of the purse, Leah's eyes widened in surprise. She seemed a little scared. Earl Kevin, with a fatherly smile, waved his hand and said, "Go and get busy." Leah left, both excited and apprehensive. Kevin's attendant picked up a fork and began tasting each dish on the table. "My lord, I have found no problems so far." Suddenly, heavy rain began to pour. Kevin's eyes moved to the window, where raindrops pounded violently against the glass. The sudden downpour mirrored the tumultuous situation at the Red Keep. He felt that the accident there was far from over and that the future remained uncertain. Did Duke Greene serve her out of love? His brother's golden daughter had grown into a conceited, foolish, and greedy woman. Even if it was truly for love, what was the source of that love? It couldn't be wisdom, it had to be beauty. But how long could such a man be deceived? His niece was already 33 years old. Time would mercilessly strip away the beauty the gods had once bestowed upon her. Her belly would wrinkle, and her breasts would sag. When that time came, she would no longer be a true wielder of power. Moreover, such a woman would inevitably bring about Tommen's downfall. Joffrey is the precedent. Kevin misses Tywin very much at this moment. Although his brother can no longer protect the Lannisters, he had already planned a strong future for the family. Kevin only needs to start from Harrenhal and manage the Riverlands. With the Riverlands and the Western Territory, they can hold power at the center of the Seven Kingdoms at any time. He has decided that when the time is right, he will expel Cersei from the Red Keep, pull out all her teeth, and confine her to Casterly Rock. Tywin would definitely understand him. If he were his brother, he would never allow his willful daughter to damage the family's honor. Everything he did was for the Lannisters. After retracting his thoughts, Earl Kevin paused and then slowly spoke. This rain won't last long. After eating, let's take a short rest and set off as soon as the rain stops. After lunch, Earl Kevin went to the room on the second floor, with his attendants in red robes guarding the door. The room had a small fireplace, with only black ashes and dying embers left inside, making it look particularly deserted. He took off his boots and sat on the worn wooden chair in front of it. After sitting quietly for a while, without a trace of sleep, Earl Kevin asked the attendant outside the door to bring him a map of the Riverlands and a jug of wine. Kevin held the wine glass in one hand and shook it gently, the purple-red liquid swirling in the glass. He lowered his head and looked at the location of the farmland near Harrenhal on the map, thinking about farmers, farm tools, food, and a series of other issues. Suddenly, he remembered the report from the Citadel he saw yesterday. Earl Kevin frowned. They said that the weather in the north had changed, and they predicted that it was a sign of winter. In winter, he could only be glad that the Citadel released black messenger crows carrying letters. If the Citadel released white messenger crows, it would have confirmed the change of seasons. Kevin frowned. The Citadel was always cautious in its reports. Perhaps the time left for the Riverlands farmland was only one season at most, and he must not waste time. He got up and went to the window. The rain was still falling fiercely, and the rain kept hitting the window, making a crackling sound. At the same time, the sun began to become dazzling, penetrating through the layers of dark clouds and casting a few rays of light. He thought they would be able to set off soon. Perhaps he should refer to Duke Greene's suggestion and visit the lords who had not yet breached their castles along the way to Harrenhal to discuss purchasing food. Although the sound of rain hitting the windows continued, the house was silent and dull, as if it was enveloped by an invisible pressure. Earl Kevin stared out the window in contemplation, feeling tired. Maybe he was really old. In the past, Kevin just sighed for a while when a voice full of energy came from outside the door, which seemed to be Leah's voice. Immediately afterwards, the fighting outside suddenly broke out, and the shouts and the sound of weapons clashing instantly shattered the original calm. What happened? Soon, there was sudden silence outside the door, and then a loud bang as the door to the room was slammed open. A woman with dark skin and a strong body appeared first, followed by a woman with a long dark braid and a body full of weapons, and then... Leah? Their bodies were stained with blood. Although he was shocked, Kevin's face remained calm, and his hand quickly reached for the sword at his waist. "Who are you? Why are you here?" The blonde girl smiled slightly, but there was no warmth in her smile. "Please allow me to reintroduce ourselves. You can call us the Sand Snakes." Sand Snakes? Prince Oberyn's illegitimate daughters? How did they find this place? Who betrayed his whereabouts? Don't look at it. We have sent your guards to meet the strangers a long time ago. Those red robes are quite difficult to deal with. The Sand Snakes slowly drew out their slender daggers, their blades flashing, glared at Osmond, his eyes filled with disdain. "I don't care what you do, Kettleblack. My duty was to protect the king, and now that he's gone, I have no reason to stay." Jaime's frown deepened. Sandor, the Kingsguard is more than just a duty to the king. It's a commitment to the realm, to honor, and to the people. Sandor Clegane, the hound, scoffed. Honor? The only honor I see is in survive. You can keep your white cloak, Jaime. I'm done. Jaime sighed, knowing there was no changing the hound's mind once it was set. Very well, Sandor. You are released from your vows. Go, and may you find whatever it is you're looking for. The hound nodded curtly and turned to leave, his heavy footsteps echoing in the chamber. The remaining Kingsguard watched him go, a mix of relief and unease in their eyes. Jaime turned back to the others. Now, as for the rest of you, remember what I said. We are the shield that guards the realm. We must be ready for anything, and that includes challenges from within and without. Sir Osmond Kettleblack leaned back in his chair, a smirk playing on his lips. Well, this should be interesting. I look forward to seeing who you bring to challenge us, Jaime. Jaime's eyes narrowed. Don't get too comfortable, Osmond. The challenges will be tough, and I expect you all to rise to the occasion. Sir Balon Swan nodded, his expression serious. We will, Captain. We will prove ourselves worthy of the white cloak. Jaime gave a curt nod. Good. Now, let's get back to our duties. The realm won't protect itself. As the Kingsguard dispersed, Jaime couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding. The realm was in turmoil, and the challenges ahead would test them all to their limits. But he was determined to lead them through it, no matter the cost. Sandor stood up from the chair with a slight stagger, his eyes fixed on Osmond. He patted his still-healing leg and in a hoarse voice declared, Kate Black can kick your ass anytime. Osmond's face tightened. I'll be waiting for you to recover from your injuries. Anytime. With a cold snort, Sandor turned his attention back to Jaime. This is my own business and has nothing to do with you. If you have a problem, you can expel me directly, just like King Joffrey expelled Sir Barristan Selmy. Jaime rubbed his head, clearly frustrated. Sandor Clegane, I want to tell you that you are a good knight, a good Kingsguard. You don't have to blame yourself for King Joffrey's death. Sandor took a step towards the door. I won't wait long, Lord Lannister. He limped to the door, and just as he was about to open it, the door swung open on its own. Lord Sandor, did you come here specifically to greet me? Hearing the voice, Jaime looked over in confusion. It seemed to be Greene's voice. Why was he here? All the Kingsguard stood up and looked towards the door.